Oh, right, I'm back, guys. Sorry about that. I had to. I only got a drink and bloody spilled it myself, so I had to change my top. But I've brought the video that you suggested I watch. So apparently this has ties to Sweetbaby Inc. It's a game that has failed. Yeah, we'll check it out.
About this game Unknown 9 Awakening, and how it was another giant failure associated with Sweetbaby Inc. Kim Belair having been credited for working on the game, as well as David Bedard at Reflector, the dev studio behind Unknown 9 Awakening, who's also a co-founder of Sweetbaby Inc. So founding members of Sweetbaby Inc. have worked on Unknown 9 Awakening, and let's get a
What's Sweetbaby Inc? So when companies are developing a new game, and they want to know what things they need to do to make it socially acceptable in a way. Sweetbaby Inc. will provide or insist that they are brought on board to help develop the game, and then give it very specific amendments to ensure that it's socially acceptable. And the big thing about Sweetbaby Inc. is almost every game that they've been or had their hands on or dealt with or been part of has been an absolute disaster. And this is another game which has just literally come out and has already just completely crashed. And when you bear in mind that it costs millions and millions of pounds to develop a full game, and many years for it to then come out and then immediately crash, it's not good. And yet all these companies that Sweetbaby Inc. have inserted themselves with, all those projects have then crashed, and millions of companies have millions of pounds have been lost. And the serious side of it is the fact that there's all these people working at the company, all these game developers and all these managers and everything that all work at this company that develop this game, that are relying and counting on this game to be a successful game in order for them to be able to make the money back and to make more games and that sort of thing. If the game fails for a lot of the companies, that's it. That's game over, literally. And they lose everything. The company gets shut down. And you got to bear in mind, you'll have some, it's quite a common thing where people are like mortgaged the homes and that sort of thing just to keep the development going to the point where they can launch it. Some people have everything tied into these games and everything on the line. So when the game crashes and fails, they lose everything. So it's really serious for some people, or a majority of people, when a game doesn't work well. I mean, when you got a game developed by a gigantic company that can afford to lose a few 100,000 or a few tens of millions, because it's in the millions. Sorry, so 10 million here or 20 million there or 100 million. When the companies can afford to lose it, fair enough. They'll just chalk it up and go, well, it didn't work, we'll move on to the next thing. But some places might have put everything they have into that like 20 million budget and they've got nothing left. And homes are involved in careers and families. And then it fumbles and completely flops. That's it. They're really in trouble.
a brief refresher of how
Serious,
that game's
yeah.
been doing before we take a look at the further news regarding this update. Hopping over to SteamDB. As of recording right now, there are currently 22 people in-game playing Unknown 9 Awakening on Steam. Review score sitting at 33.47%, astronomically terrible.
Yeah, it's Unknown Awakening 9, was it? Unknown 9 Awakening.
We're sitting
22
at
people in game.
33.47%, astronomically terrible, as well as the player count, of course. And the all-time peak player count is also awful, having achieved
285 all-time peak. Oh, God, jeez. That is so bad. The PlayStation pulled a game a little while ago, and that had something like 600 or 500 all-time peak players, and it was doing better than this. And that game got pulled, and Sweetbaby Inc. also had hands in that game, and that was only a few months ago.
285. To call this game a flop might even be generous. And I don't just say that because of the terribly performing game
The graphics look good.
itself, but everyone associated with Unknown 9 Awakening, from Reflector, Sweetbaby Inc., and even Bandai Namco, seemed to have thought that this would be a great, highly...
Look, you see the girl there? She's from, the thing with Henry Cavill in where, The Witcher. She was the actress from The Witcher. That's in this. But yeah,
successful new intellectual
they
property,
clearly put a
as
lot
they
of
were
work
making
in.
their own cinematic universe of sorts, including various comic releases to go along with the game, and even a web series and scripted podcast. Oh, and also some novels, as you can see here. Got this whole thing lined up. So, like,
Wow.
let's just take a minute to just let this all sink in, man. Like, holy smokes, dude. They had...
They have put a huge amount of work into this. Like, and a huge amount of work has gone into this game.
This reminds me of Concord, right? Like, didn't the Concord people think that this was going to be like a long-term, like, Star Wars level successful IP? And they had like all these like huge ambitions for Concord. I mean, this is a similar thing here with Unknown 9 Awakening. Obviously, far less money spent on this than Concord, and I don't believe Sweetbaby Inc. was involved with Concord at all. I'm simply comparing how both have flopped entirely, and of course there's also similarities in things like DI policies with the games, and also out-of-touchness and tone deafness from the people involved with both games. The point is, it's just funny to me, the similarities. It's really astonishing when people defend Sweetbaby Inc. They always cite like 2 successful games that they worked on, that being Ragnarok and also Spider-Man. And the defenders conveniently...
But to be fair, with Spider-Man, there was actually quite a lot of people that complained about Spider-Man for certain aspects of the game. And those aspects of the game that people complained about were the aspects that Sweetbaby Inc. had the most control over. So, yeah.
Never talk about the numerous, growing list of like extreme failures that Sweetbaby Inc. has worked on. And another point that I've brought up before is Ragnarok and Spider-Man had giant teams working on those games. In other words, SBI's involvement was probably kept at a minimum. But the games that have like far smaller teams and therefore likely far more involvement from Sweetbaby Inc. tend to be these like huge flops, man. And now in this...
Why do they let them work? Why do they let Sweetbaby work with them? Well, I can't confirm, and this may be hearsay, but there has been reports where they've said that Sweetbaby Inc. have approached the companies making a game and put the company into position that if the company doesn't allow Sweetbaby Inc. to be part of it, then Sweetbaby Inc. will make things very hard for that company and the game to be successful. So, how? So the example I'm thinking of, and I don't know if this is true, but apparently there was a game coming out and Sweetbaby Inc. approached the developer and said, look, we need to be part of this. You need to bring us on board. And the developer said, no, we don't want you to be part of it. And Sweetbaby Inc. said, well, if you don't take us on board and make us part of it, then we're going to tarnish your name. We're going to tarnish your employees and the upper management. We're going to put out rumours to discredit you. We're going to start spreading rumours about the game and how bad it is, so when it comes out, no one will want it. And I don't know how legitimate that is, so don't take it as fact. But there has been a number of those reports that Sweetbaby has basically threatened and blackmailed companies into making sure that Sweetbaby Inc. is part of it. And then, of course, Sweetbaby Inc. gets paid. And there are obviously places where companies that want to have a certain score in certain areas on the political scale or social scale will actually approach them and ask for their help.
Situation, I haven't even finished everything because turns out Reflector is going through layoffs, similar to Zhao, who worked with Sweetbaby Inc., who then had layoffs and then shut down their entire games division. It looks like Reflector is currently going down that same road. As that takes us...
But why? I don't know. I mean, if I was a game developer and you see that the majority or 98% of everything Sweetbaby Inc. has worked on has been a complete flop, and the company that developed the game has lost tens of millions or hundreds of millions of pounds, I'd be like, no, you are absolute poison. Don't come near us. We want nothing to do with you. Because that'll be mean, but maybe they're just too scared to say no. Who knows?
This to Eurogamer, who says On No 9 Awakening developers report layoffs. Reflector Entertainment's debut launched last month, and already they are now laying people off. Staff members who worked on No 9 Awakening report layoffs across the team at Canadian outfit Reflector Entertainment. Jobs lost include roles within Reflector's art, marketing, narrative, and quality assurance teams. Game developer reported No 9 Awakening launched last month to mixed reviews. On Steam, where it sits with a mixed rating, less than 100 players have rated the game. The game was also meant to act as a central point for the franchise as a cross-media brand. Just this week, a second season of No 9 Out of Sight tie-in podcast was launched, while the fourth issue of its graphic novel series No 9 Torment arrived. There's also a website.
I mean, they had graphic novels done and everything. They've put huge amounts of work into this. And now there's layoffs. People are literally losing their job. So, it's having a huge impact on people's lives.
Series No 9 Passage, which you can go watch on YouTube. We also have a quote that reads, "Unfortunately, I was affected by the layoffs at Reflector Entertainment, which means I'm currently looking for a job as a narrative designer or game writer. If you hear of any opportunities, please let me know," one staff member who lost their job wrote. Eurogamer has contacted Bandai Namco for comment. They also mentioned that the protagonist Haruna was played in the final game by Anya Shalatra, aka Yennefer in Netflix's The Witcher. And it was the first project from the Montreal-based Reflector, co-founded by former Assassin's Creed Unity creative director Alexandre Amancio. Returning to David Bedard, you may have noticed that he had also worked over at Ubisoft, seemingly Ubisoft Montreal. There's a recurring theme with a lot of these consultation firms like Sweetbaby Inc. and others that they are based out of Canada, and it does seem like a number of the people working there do indeed have ties back to Ubisoft. A top comment on Kotaku in Action discussing this news would say, "I would have loved to be a fly on the office wall with the people in charge when the sales numbers for those novels and comic books started coming in."
Yeah, I can't believe this company went as far as doing novels and comic books to promote the game. And then it's just absolutely crashed and burned. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that. See what's going on behind the scenes and why. I'll be honest, if I was a company that Sweetbaby Inc. had invited themselves to and then assisted with, and the game absolutely tanked, I would actually go online and I'll do a full-on presentation saying, look, this is what I want to do. Sweetbaby Inc. did XXX. I would expose Sweetbaby Inc. for absolutely everything if that's the reason why the game tanked.
What sales numbers? The response reading, "It's highly regarded. Why don't they do it?"
Yeah, they're like a virus. Sweetbaby Inc. is a virus. It goes from one project to another, and then all those projects fall down and die. It quite literally is the epitome of a virus. Sweetbaby Inc. virus. Yeah, absolutely.
Any market research and playtesting. Spend 5 minutes on YouTube and you'll see this is not a winning strategy. Virtue signaling may get you a lot of clicks, but it won't get you sales. To be quite frank though, all of this stuff is extremely bizarre. Like, you would imagine that they would care about sales, but then they talk about they being Sweetbaby Inc. employees having been on record talking about wanting to burn the gaming industry to the ground. On top of that, we've seen how a number of these consultation firms and their associates have been grifting off of government money, attempting to use DI as a way of achieving ESG metrics, which helps them secure said funding. It's all extremely bizarre and corrupt, and clearly these people really shouldn't be in the gaming industry. They have no passion for games or gamers. As a matter of fact, lack of passion is an understatement. A lot of these people flat out despise gamers. So let me know what you think about all of that Sweetbaby Inc. and No 9 Awakening stuff, and we've got one more thing to take a look at here. As I've had a lot of people tagging me and mentioning the situation in my comments, asking me to cover this, so let's take a look. Ollie Barter had said, Sony is in talks to buy Kadokawa. And by the way, thank you all for the tags and comments. Now let's take a look at what he says here over on Forbes. In a pretty astonishing piece of news, it seems that Sony is in talks to buy Kadokawa. According to Reuters, Sony is thinking of buying Kadokawa, which would have massive ramifications for both games and anime. From a gaming standpoint, the big acquisition would be From Software, of which Kadokawa has a controlling stake as of 2014. Admittedly, Sony already has a small chunk of FromSoft, along with Tencent, but this new setup would put Sony much more directly in charge. Considering Microsoft's recent acquisition of Activision, it makes sense that Sony would go after a company like FromSoft via Kadokawa.
Yeah.
Sony has had a long-standing relationship with FromSoft, going back to the 90s and the original PlayStation, so in theory, this could be a good matchup. However, my only concern with this is that the Japan studio at Sony was gutted recently. Okay, yeah, hold up, let's talk about that really quick. So, back in 2021, yeah, Sony essentially shut down Japan studio. Now, people often meme around with varying levels of seriousness that Sony isn't even a Japanese company any longer. And Sony gutting or shutting down Japan studio, however you want to phrase it, certainly does seem like a symbolic representation of that being the case. They attempted to justify this action by essentially saying that the studio just wasn't profitable enough anymore. And then what do they do a few years later? Get involved with Concord, losing about $400 million. Now, of course, a lot of stuff has occurred throughout all of this. This is just like a few brief points, but oh my gosh, dude. So we left off here. However,
no, Sweetbaby Inc. apparently wasn't involved in Concord. So they fumbled and killed themselves all by themselves. So
my only concern with this is that Japan studio at Sony was gutted recently, and the same thing could happen under Sony to FromSoft. That would obviously be awful. The other side of this is Kadokawa's anime and manga output. Sony already has Crunchyroll and Aniplex, so buying Kadokawa would bring a huge amount of IP across anime and manga under Sony's roof. Kadokawa also has a sizable chunk of the Western anime press, having bought Anime News Network and owning Bookwalker, who run GX+. Yeah, well, Anime News Network and Sony, they would go perfect together, hand in hand, if you get that joke. The joke being Anime News Network's terrible reputation. It's a lot of stuff we could talk about regarding that, but I'm not going to bury the lead at the end. The article would conclude saying, in short, this is a lot to take in and would have a dramatic impact across games and anime, not only in Japan, but also globally. Yeah, so I do think this would be pretty terrible stuff. Sony have an increasing grip, infesting their hands onto FromSoft even more. And clearly also not a good thing for the anime industry, in my opinion. We'll see how things...
you hope it doesn't happen. Well, I mean, I'm not been really into that sort of thing myself, so it doesn't really impact me, but yeah, it doesn't sound like it'd be good if it does happen, so...
continue to develop, but let me know what you think about all of this news, the Unknown 9 Awakening stuff, and this Sony stuff at the end of this video. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed my coverage, and if you did, please consider liking and or subscribing.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's crazy that another game has just completely tanked. Like I said, that's people losing their jobs. So there's, like, lots of people now losing jobs. They've got bills to pay. You know, they may have families to feed. And now they've got nothing. That's it, the game over for them. They have to start again and try and find a way to get an income. And yet, the Sweetbaby, just as you said earlier on, they're a virus, they're a plague, just go from one to the other, just killing thing off. If it's right what he said, that Sweetbaby Inc. have openly said that they want to destroy the gaming industry, they're going a good way about it because everything they've touched pretty much has been destroyed apart from the two that weren't. But even the reviews for the Spider-Man one, even though the reviews were really, really good and people loved the new Spider-Man game, there were a lot of people that weren't happy with some very specific aspects, which fingers have been pointed towards Sweetbaby Inc. for inserting into the game. So, yeah. At the end of the day, if you want to make a game, you need to have the passion for that game and know what you're doing. It's like Xtified. I don't know how well Xtified's doing, but I hope it's doing okay because, you know, the people that developed that really, really care about the game. So I don't know. It's not good news, is it really though? So.